Good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking part of your Saturday morning and joining us here at STEELPORT. Welcome. Before we get into the today's event, let me just do a little bit of logistic mechanics. Today is part of the series that we have. Once a month, we have one of our great chefs, local chef, joining us. We are actually blessed in Portland area with having this great chefs from famous James Beard Awards, wonderful restaurants, people who really have committed their lives into cooking. So we get a chance to visit today. I get a chance to introduce our chef in a short while. This is the Steelport factory, so you're actually sitting on the portion of the factory. So if you haven't had a chance after the discussion, feel free to grab anybody with a Steelport shirt for a tour and get a chance to hear and understand what's manufacturing happening. And you're open now 9 to 5, Monday through Saturday. So you actually manufacturing is happening back there while the event is going on. So I keep describing it like praying, going to Vatican City to pray. It's like coming to the factory that does the knives to learn about knife skills. It's a very unique opportunity to have in this area in Portland, Oregon. So welcome for that. This opportunity to hold the knives, hold the equipment, and moving forward. This series we started, one of the reasons of bringing the community together, but the other one was that a very selfish area that we actually went to wonderful restaurants, make great relationships, and the chefs are busy, we are busy. It's really hard to grab them for an hour and have a one-on-one conversation, understand what the tricks of the trade they're doing. And every one of our partners have been amazingly generous chefs. This is 1 hour that we hear on the skills, chef skills, and also opportunity for you guys to ask questions and one-on-one opportunities, and chefs stay behind, and then like today, we get a chance to taste some of the food as well. That's kind of the main area. Again, we're targeting to be from 11 to 12 o'clock in an hour. We wrap up. After that, Chef Dana will be around if you have any questions to ask. We also have in the back, we'll have some of our staff, including my co-founder Akon, and some of the staff to answer any knife questions. How do you hone your knife and things like that? We can answer those questions while you're here. If you have signed up, you're already entered into a raffle. This is a wonderful $100 gift certificate to Le Pigeon or Canard or Le Pigeon.
Either.
Courtesy of great chef Dana. So it was a wonderful thing. If you haven't, you get a chance to sign up at the front and let Emma know so we can enter, and then we do the drawing at the end. And if you're here, we appreciate any reviews you can do. So if you see some of these guys, you can scan it and do a review for the location you are, and we always appreciate those areas. So that's kind of the commercial part of the event. So let me turn to the main. That was why we are here. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce Dana, most Chef Dana, that you guys all know here. We have come here. I had a chance to meet Dana, I think the first few weeks that we actually had Steelport introduced. Gabriel Rucker, who works with Dana and one of our original James Beard Award winners, and Pigeon was one of the big supporters we had in the previous company, Finex, and one of the first supporters we have at Steelport. And it was just amazing feat by Gabe to steal Dana from San Diego and bring him out here to Portland. You was asking Dana, so what are you making today? He described it, and he described it a lot better, but translated to me to Filipino tartare, which, when you think about it, is kind of a complex flavor already by the name, by the head chef from Le Pigeon, which is famous for his French. So I am really personally waiting for all the techniques combined here. And then it brings in, being born in Germany, spending a lot of time in San Diego before coming in and joining Le Pigeon in 2020. So he brings in this complex. And then today I found out that mother German, father Filipino. Like a starting point. I was just you didn't have any choice by having a very
absolutely
like that. So with that, I turn it over to Chef Dana.
Yeah, thanks for coming, guys. So we will be breaking down beef tenderloin, Snake River Farms, Idaho. Whenever it's on any of the menus in any of the restaurants, this is what I like to use. Really quickly, we will be making kinila or kilawin. It's kind of interchangeable depending on what part of the Philippines you're from. There's 7,000 islands or 7,600 islands in the Philippines, so 150-ish dialects of different languages outside of, Tagalog and English being the main things that are spoken there. So specifically, Kinila is raw, and it's ceviche more than a tartare. We use no heat. We're using acid, specifically calamansi, which can be substituted with limes. Easier things to find if you're outside of don't have access to an Asian market or where it grows. And it's like a pre-colonization dish, so it's very special to me. But the Spanish were there for 300 years. There's great influence that we took from them food-wise, but this was a dish that we've been cooking for thousands of years. So we're going to kind of fabricate it really quickly, get it soaking in the vinegar and the lime juice, lemon juice, and then we'll do the rest of the knife skills and kind of move from there. And I'm going to keep all of the trays out to kind of showcase how we're breaking this down and kind of what we would use it. If you're doing it this at your house or when we're doing it in the restaurant, what gets saved for staff meal, what else we could use these things for. And in my restaurants, you sit like 2 feet from me, so please don't be silent. Come close and you guys can talk. And yeah, if you have any questions, just shout it out. So to start, we're going to separate the chain, so you can use your thumb. I'm also breaking this down mostly with the paring knife, and I love like the versatility of these knives. A flexible bony knife is usually what we would kind of use to do this. So you can separate the silver skin off the side and start making our incisions to get to the tail.
Is the silver skin what you mean the chain?
So the silver skin runs all the way through. Silver skin is usually described as something that's not palatable. So we want like no amount of direct heat is going to pull that out. We need to remove it. The beef tenderloin in general, it runs along the cage. So underneath the rib cage in the cow, towards the back end of it. The most tender part, the top side being like what you would make Chateaubriand. So if you wanted to truss this and roast this whole, you get closer to like the terrace major side of it, and then actual filet mignon will be cut from the center of it. So the tails will be used for scraps if you had a pasta on the menu, or if you wanted to grind it down into burgers. The chain is kind of like the cook snack. So when we're breaking these down, if it's on the menu, we're running like 5 or 6 of these every day. We'll fabricate them. Me or one of the sous chefs. It has a lot of intermuscular fat, so it needs a lot of direct heat. So we'll separate all the chains. You'll see them in the front. It should come off in one piece. And usually we just season it, salt and pepper, throw it on the grill until it turns nice and black. And then you can just kind of rough chop it. And it's a nice little snack. Not good for tartare, kilawin. So we'll start up near the top and just make our incision all the way down. The good thing about these cutting boards that you'll see as well is I actually didn't know this because I've never ran 2 of them together, but it's perfect. They're offset, so they'll slide together. Our protein side on the top with our tray to catch kind of any of the juices from the back ends. Allow us to keep our cutting board clean before we flip it over and work all of our vegetable butchery. So the chain will come completely off, and you can make some smaller incisions to kind of make sure all of this is clean. And you'll flip it over, and we need our chef's knife for this top side. We're going to take off the rest of this muscle, starting at an angle, and then just coming straight down. So these are completely separated. If you were going to throw these on the grill, there is a certain amount of this silver skin that we would remove, just so it'll be chewy and it won't really break down from heat. And then there's just some more fat that runs on the top ends that will clear up, so we get just the exposed muscle for our tartare. And you can run your knife alongside of it and it'll just kind of lift up. Depending on what you're using it for, you can take off as much or as little. But for the tartare, we don't want anything other than just the exposed muscle.
How do you decide if you want to use your chef knife versus your paring knife?
So with this one, I'm going to use the paring knife to get in and actually remove any of the silver skin that is hiding underneath any of these fat caps. So the chef's knife is easier for long cuts to kind of take off these little fat nuggets, I guess you call them. The type of cut that we're making kind of dictates what we're using. And then you have this little membrane here that will just completely come off with your fingers. And this is what we'll use the paring knife for. Has anyone broken down a beef tenderloin before? Not you. You're just one of my cooks sitting right in front of me. That's Isaiah, everybody. Embarrass him. Say hi. It's one of my brightest young chefs at Canard right now. So we have most of the muscle here, and what we're going to do is start about in the middle of where the silver skin runs. Make our first incision to the right. If you're left-handed, I don't know what to tell you. It's all backwards. And then we'll work back to our left-hand side. Yeah. Are you lefty?
So is the chain, if you're like at the butcher store, is the chain called anything else? Or would you even see it?
I don't think you would see it. I think if you're really good friends with the butcher, which I suggest you all try to become friends with him, I think that if you have a large-scale butcher operation, they're probably cleaning this up and grinding it. That's what I would assume that they're doing. Like, that would be a really rare finds. I don't know any. I don't go like commercially or non-commercially to any of the butchers, but that's a really good question. I think that they're probably grinding all these into burgers.
Yeah,
that would be the.
I'm just curious.
That's a good question. You're a lefty? Yeah. Have you broken one of these down before?
No, not a whole.
So just make our little incision halfway through, and then we'll use tension on the back end to kind of pull the rest of this off. Yeah, these knives are razor blades. And this is trash. We're not going to save any of this. I want to just kind of showcase all the scrap. Like if you're breaking these down like textbook, what they'll usually tell you in like a culinary school or a commercial kitchen environment, you're going to have like 60% waste on some of these things. So how we repurpose this is super important to make our cost in the restaurant. I think it's probably why outside of steakhouses, you don't see a ton of center cut beef tenderloin on the menu. It's really difficult to fabricate correctly and not have a ton of waste on there. What was that? You could throw it into the stock. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you're making stock in your house, you are in a good spot. But is any Filipinos here? Anybody that eats a lot of Filipino food? No? Completely silent. All right. All right. So I think a lot of it, I know there was a lot of questions like, oh, it's like Filipino, and you have mostly French restaurants. I think it lends itself really well to French food because Filipino food is very assertive. It's not balanced. It's high in salinity. It's high in acidity. A lot of like this dish in particular is like a really good kind of study of using what's available to you. Like we talked about 7,000 islands, Kinilaw, Kilauea. If you're more landlocked, if you live in the mountains, it might be boar, it might be venison, domesticated pork. If you're on one of the hundreds of thousands of miles of coastline, it's more of like a traditional ceviche. You're going to pull anything out of the water. So I think that like all of the fat and butter that we don't have access to in most island nations really lends itself well to kind of meld those flavors. And we do have quite a bit of kind of crossover in some of the menu development. That I had like a lumpia on the menu for 3 months in Pigeon, and we just switched out all the pork for duck and foie gras, and that works pretty well. I think it's like most Pacific Islanders are also lactose intolerant, so we don't use a lot of dairy, and I would say over half of us. So you can keep any amount of this on the bottom. You can clean it up as much or as little as you want, like we said. Obviously, if we're going for a raw preparation, we want most of this none of it is hard fat, which is important because that hard fat will be very off-putting on your palate. And then outside of that, if you're going to cut center cut medallions, beef tenderloin, filet, um, just kind of sizing how thick that you want them, right? So if you have a small amount of fat in there, that will render down if you're cooking it into the pan or you're trussing it um, or putting it on the grill. So we have a pretty clean version that we'll just take down and clean up a little bit more, and then we'll just start making our cuts. Salinity, like salts, show you. Yeah, there's like, I kind of love the idea that it's not balanced and it's not round. Everything is very assertive about all of the dishes. If it's salty, it's really, really salty. If it's calamansi is abundant there, so it's basically like a really tiny lime that's hard to it's distinguishable, but I think your everyday person that's not familiar with that food, it tastes like really good lime juice and lemon juice mixed together. Um, and there, like I said, with the absence of dairy, you don't have that kind of fat that coats your palate that like takes you all the way through. So Filipino food is very like spiky. So you have it and it's like, wow, this is really acidic. I'm sure that this dish, it's going to be pretty bright. I hope you guys will like it, but it is it's good. So if we were going to take it down further, obviously if you wanted to portion it, you can portion them any way that you want, and then we just invert that cut side and that's what would hit the pan. For now, for tartare, we're just going to take nice little like block cuts, and then we'll start working down from there. This is like what your filet piece would look like. Snacks for the kitchen, the same here. I mean, we could just kind of rough chop these down and braise them, make stroganoff out of them, but this is all completely usable. Different kind of applications for all pieces. And that's kind of, we don't have a ton of waste that's in the garbage outside of the silver skin and some of the hard fat, but this is kind of where you're sitting at. This looks good for what we would expect in the restaurant. And it's the same thing for like texture, mouthfeel when we're making these cut. If it's like a traditional French tartare that we're going to prepare, grind it or keep it. I think the smaller the mouthfeel, the more palatable it is, depending on how it's going to be served. If it's ceviche, we want to cut it, or sorry, like a fish-based ceviche or quinoa, a little bit larger. The longer that you keep it in the vinegar, the further it's going to go. So as little as 5 or 10 minutes, up to about an hour. After that, the protein structure starts breaking down and it starts to get a little odd. So we'll get these cut down as quickly as possible and put the vinegar in there. Usually vinegar, if you guys are interested and you like this dish and you're like, I like spiky food, I want to make this at home. Sugarcane vinegar, the darker the better. It's just a preference of mine. And then coconut vinegar. So again, things that are kind of readily available on the islands. I kind of brought everything that's in our natural like pantry in Pigeon. So it's something a little bit more accessible if you wanted to try to recreate some of this. So cider vinegar is what I'm using. And instead of calamansi, I just have 2 parts lime juice, fresh squeezed always, and 1 part lemon juice, which will give us kind of the same result. You can buy like calamansi vinegar that's really expensive that you probably shouldn't buy. And then like calamansi puree, much more affordable. If you go to like any Asian market, that's usually like in like the frozen food section, and it works really, really well. And we want to kind of stay true to form with, like I said, pre-colonization dish. Spanish came in like the 1500s, so anything before then, like all of the original natives before like the islands were kind of openly trading with each other, and it was just a whole bunch of different tribes. It's very, very simple, and we kept it kind of the same way. So black pepper, it's usually like bird's eye chilies, which are a little bit maybe too spicy and very random of like how hot they can be. So I just use some jalapenos and some fresh ginger, salt and pepper, and then I have some fried garlic and some fried shallots just for texture, and then always rice. and we didn't have shrimp chips in the 1500s, but I brought some shrimp chips because they're always good.
Chef, can you talk a little bit about your knife skills? When you do, besides preference, is it particle slicing versus rocking?
Yeah, so
The knife versus feel of the knife.
I heard something like 2 years ago that I'd never heard before. I was working an event. I can't remember who said that, but what I'm doing right now, they referred to as like a choo-choo cut, like the choo-choo train. Like I'd never heard that, and it makes a lot of sense. I think that is more when you're going against resistance to make I'm making a more precise cut when I'm pulling, and then I'm choo-choo cutting when I'm like getting through something that doesn't necessarily need to be as precise. So I'm pulling when I'm trying to get the thickness of about a 1/4 inch on these, just so that they all cook the same amount of time, um, and the mouth feel is going to be pretty uniform, and then I'll choo-choo cut to get through the rest of them. The choo-choo cut haunts you. Like it is a weird. This was like a really really seasoned chef too. I cannot remember what event it was, and I kind of couldn't work the rest of the event because I couldn't stop thinking about it. Yeah, I mean, it's a rocking cut. Rocking cut doesn't sound as cool though, right? Choo-choo cut is definitely like this. And then like when I'm breaking down the onions, you'll see like an actual like chop, which I think is just when you don't need to be precise at all and you're working through it. If we're making staff meal, if we're cutting down mirepoix for stock and we're just getting through our projects, the less precise, that's the least of the precise cuts I would say is actually chopping through it, but the most quick and efficient.
You typically chill the meat in the restaurant to make it easier to cut?
Yeah, as cold as possible for these things, and then definitely for service. Like this needs to reset. A lot of like this version, like this technique of like the Kilauea Kitty Law stuff, it sits out at room temp, and there's a reason for a lot of that. Like why you wouldn't see beef usually. We have something called like twice dead meat, which doesn't sound great. It's like because we don't have the ability to raise cattle for eating, right? If it dies and the village next over, like over the way says, oh, this cow died, so it's been dead already. So we don't eat a ton of rare meat. I think that exists a lot in some Hispanic cultures too, Mexico specifically, where most of uh, the kitchens and cooks I worked with in San Diego, obviously from Mexico, very similar kind of mindset of like red, raw, rare meat is not good because the quality could be different. So we kind of counteract that by using a ton of vinegar and preservation techniques to cut through it. And it's really odd that we usually will not refrigerate this after it's been set. A lot of the food that we prepare, like for any kind of birthday celebration, it's very like tepid. So there's like it's like the most anti-Western palate food where it's like this tepid, spiky, super like acidic or super salty food that like, I guess this is supposed to be just not hot or cold. But that's a very good question.
Is there a way to tell a good cut of meat versus others? Ones that have like more marbling?
Yeah, I think more marbling, especially if you're using like a beef tenderloin, all of that intermuscular fat is what you want. And like, I think for tartare, less important than if you're cutting filet mignon and you want that sear so you have that kind of moisture running all the way through. If you're at the butcher shop and you're looking at it and it doesn't look, if it's off colored or it seems like it's oxidized, it's been cut a long time ago, it's been sitting there, those are things that you're looking out for too. But definitely all of that marbling running all the way through is going to be the higher grade quality. If you look at domestic or true like Wagyu, you'll see like that spider web that's running all the way through. How much money you want to spend on it will kind of dictate what you want. I think that generally overall, the more the better, but I think a lot of it can be overkill too, like spending $80, $90 a pound on some like A5 Wagyu that you're just going to kind of wing it at your house. Might be a little bit of a gamble, but you're more than welcome to try. A favorite butcher shop. I mean, I think our kitchens, just our restaurants. I mean, we've got 13 very capable butchers there. So on the non-commercial side of it, I'm not the best person to ask for that. Everything's butchered in house, and everybody. It's a very interesting kind of restaurant setup where it's not relegated to myself or the sous chefs to do all of that. Everybody, specifically in Pigeon too, everybody knows how to do everything. And that's something that I hope kind of catches on in more upscale kitchens, because you spend all this time working your way through the ranks, and you usually, a lot of that knowledge is guarded, and it comes from a cost perspective, initially, I guess, and that makes sense. Restaurants are hard businesses to run, but you can't train a fleet of good young chefs if they can never touch anything. So we kind of go in with the mindset, with a new project's hitting, a new dish is going on the menu, somebody will mess this up. And to just like kind of mentally prepare yourself that like don't get upset and don't scare somebody out of asking. Right? I think that's a really important part of it, is if you berate somebody for a skill that they don't have and you're not teaching them, nobody's really winning. So I think that that's one of the many things that kind of set our crews apart, is anybody that asks to do anything will always get the answer yes. It might not be that second, but it's kind of in our mental notebook. And again, Isaiah is one of my best young chefs, so you can ask him. We've never yelled at you for cutting something wrong, right? I don't say that yet. So we're at the tail end of this. I'm gonna get these on the vinegar and then wipe down my cutting board and start processing all of the vegetables. Then we'll just kind of mix it together, and that's it.
Every kitchen has a lot of prep work, and over 20 years of more than you have been working here, you probably have done every function of it. Do you have a favorite part of prep?
I like really monotonous stuff. I like folding, like dumpling work, pasta work. I think it's like a nice like trial and error of like every day, can you get a little bit quicker? Can you get a little bit more efficient? Like new shapes are always fun. Like it's one, like that's really the real beauty of like being a seasoned cook. I think it's year 24 now. Um, you get to be proficient in a lot of things. And I think after you get over like the young chef thing where you're 19 or 20, like I just want to learn everything. When you come to the realization that you will never learn everything, and that's kind of the beauty of this industry, it really, you take a lot of pride in mentoring and teaching. Like it's nice to teach somebody a skill set that maybe I haven't done in a number of years, because when you describe it out loud, it kind of lets you relearn it yourself. Right? It's like, well, why do you do this? I'm like, I have not thought about that. We just do it because this is the way that we do it. And then when you walk yourself through, you're like, okay, like this makes a lot of sense. But we do a lot of like dumpling forming. As soon as I'm done here, we got to go form 400 dumplings at work. So we're doing that. Stuffing. I have a gyoza on the vegetarian menu in Pigeon right now. So we have to form some of those today too. So like, I really like kind of turning my brain off, standing with 3 or 4 of my other chefs and just going through that. It's nice, and it's like therapeutic. And I think for Pigeon's a different kind of situation. To get to that kitchen, they've been with me for a number of years. So Canard usually has the newest ones in the company that are kind of joining us that have been there for under a year, but there's nobody in Le Pigeon that's been there for less than 2 or 3 years with me. So it's really nice to work with the people that don't have a lot of face time with me yet and do those projects. I think that as a younger chef, that's one of the things that seems very daunting. Pasta work, everyone like says how hard it is, and it is difficult for sure. But just getting repetition and those kind of projects give you a couple thousand reps a week. So it's easy to get pretty proficient if you do something every single day, a couple hundred, a couple thousand times. All right. So This is our mixture of lime juice and lemon juice. Again, if you can find calamansi, that would be the move.
This is like a 2-to-1 ratio.
2-to-1 ratio, more lime than lemon for sure. I've never Kenny lawed an entire beef tenderloin, so we're just eyeballing this right now. I'll have a scaled down kind of recipe to make a smaller, more manageable batch. But getting these in here, and if you have too much in there, you just want to submerge these, whatever protein you're cooking, get it as flat as possible. Make sure that it's completely covered, so it'll start that process so the bottom is not cooking while the top is sitting. And like I said, after about 5 minutes, we'll be ready to go. Beef tartare, everyone can wrap their mind around that. So even at its raw form, we're fine. It's high-end beef, so there's no issues like foodborne illness. The vinegar cook is just going to change the texture. So it'll get more and more firm as we talk, and we'll see how far we can get with all the knife cuts and how long it's actually going to sit in the vinegar. If you messed up and poured everything in there, we have a backup plan of the chinois or the strainer. We can strain some of that out. But I think this looks really good right now where it's kind of just lacquered and coated, and that's going to be enough to just make sure that everything has enough.
How long do you leave it?
We're going to leave this until we eat it. So I think we probably have like 10 minutes. That might be a little generous on my part. I don't know if I'm that fast. Maybe 15 minutes they'll sit in there. And then the juxtaposition of like super hot rice, cold-ish, tepid-ish beef ceviche, which doesn't sound great. It'll be better than it sounds, but
And the other liquid was a sugar cane vinegar.
yeah. So right now, what you're tasting is going to be cider vinegar, but sugarcane vinegar or coconut vinegar. I prefer sugarcane vinegar. I like cider vinegar as just kind of your baseline if you're looking to build your pantry out at your house. It's got a good amount of sweetness, and I think that that can kind of give depth of flavor, especially like I said, when we're making a dish from a culture that's like not traditionally very balanced. Having a little bit of sweetness in there without the application of like granulated sugar is very helpful.
You said Snake River Farm?
Snake River Farm, Idaho. Right.
Have a favorite Filipino restaurant?
That's a very. I went to Magna Magna. Sorry, after we moved here, and I think the first time I ate there, it was summertime, and they had halo halo, which is like super super like that warms my heart. It's like one of those dishes. I call it like the fried chicken dish. Like I'm not gonna go home and fry chicken. Like I'm not gonna make a fried chicken sandwich that's like such a. I'd rather go pay somebody $15 to make me a good fried chicken sandwich. And halo halo is fried chicken for me. It's basically like shaved ice with condensed milk poured over the top. And you have like, we don't do a lot of like overly sweet desserts in the Philippines. So you have like very traditional, kind of more savory ice cream flavors like ube, avocado. Maybe you'll have like mango, which is great. And then it sounds really odd. I'm like not being a very good, like I'm not pushing Filipino food forward very well here. I'm just like, it's really, there's corn in there. There's like gummy bears. It sounds very odd. But halo means mix. So mix is like kind of what's left over. So it can have any like kind of mix of sort of like jellies or red beans, which sounds odd, which actually works. And then the whole thing's covered in shaved ice, and you pour like super, super sweet condensed milk over the top. And that's like one of the most special dishes from my childhood. And they absolutely knocked it out of the park with the one that I had. And I think that I was really stoked. And I was like talking to everybody. I just moved to Portland. And I think they only run it during summer, which makes sense because it's shaved ice and nobody wants to eat that when it's raining and 40 degrees outside. But that was the best one. But I think that for the most part, especially if I'm around family, like it's hard to go out and eat and spend money on that type of food for a couple of reasons. It's hyper like region and province based, right? And like I think if you come from any kind of like if you're a first generation or second generation immigrant, your auntie or your mom or your grandfather's like lumpia is the best, or whatever your ethnic food of choice is. I think that that's one of your first food memories for the most part, speaking from experience. And yeah, my grandfather's cooking and my auntie's cooking are the best. So it's very hard to kind of put that side by side. All right. So we're gonna just toss everything else in there. If you had like bird's eye chilies, we could start like our vinegar like mixture or steep prior to the meat going in there. So if we had our chilies, if we had our onions, they could go in first. I just wanted to get this cooked as quickly as possible, so you're not eating like actual tartare. Yeah, the best part about this, like whether it's like a home kitchen or you have like 150 square foot kitchen like we do at Pigeon, this is absolutely amazing. And I use this every single night for every service. So we talked earlier about the choo choo and the pole, and this is going to be the chop. So we're just going to get some nice like kind of choo choo. Yeah. No, that's great. The choo choo chop. For not crying, I've heard a lot of things. Keeping your mouth open. I don't know if that like works after all of these years. We're still like, especially if you're processing. I think shallots a lot too. That is like the really difficult one if we're breaking down like 4 or 5 quarts at a time. That makes it very difficult. This is the first time I'm doing this, so like that went pretty well. I think just like I said, like we work a ton of hours in the kitchen. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody, and it's like repetition, repetition. If like you're aspiring young chef or just an aspiring good home cook, I think just doing it as much as possible. Everybody has this idea that I want to be good now, I want to be fast now, and that's just not realistic. No amount of like, there's no talent in chopping this. It's just thousands and thousands of onions chopped, and a couple nicked fingers along the way, and then that'll straighten you up a little bit. 1/16 of an inch, exactly. I measured it too. I think that we nailed it.
Can you talk a little bit about your claw hold? That's one very common question I get from newcomers and saying, "Oh, we heard about claw hold." And like that.
Oh yeah, claw hold. So like when we talk to you, basically keeping the last tip of my finger pointed towards the left side of my body, so you can never chop the top of your finger. So when we're looking at it, we're just talking, then we know that we're just moving it all the way forward. And that'll keep you mostly from cutting yourself. You might cut your knuckle too, but that's better than the tip of your finger. Yeah, and then I'm working up and around. So we're starting, and you saw me like move it halfway through. So we're working up, kind of rotating around this. And after we get to the middle part, we'll do the same thing, turn it on its side and work up and around.
You're sliding the blade against your upper knuckle.
Yes, yeah, right on this first knuckle right here. So that's just keeping it to make sure. And my cuts are, I'm being very careful to not bring it above my knuckle, because if it goes above, that's when we come down. But if we keep it like halfway between, it's never going to come over.
So that knuckle should always be higher than whatever you're cutting.
Exactly, exactly. If it was just that easy, then nobody would ever cut themselves. But I didn't bring gloves, so the chilies are going to be. Totally forgot about that. Don't shake my hand after this. Oh, I brought gloves. Check that out. And like I said earlier, like bird's eye chilies, which are like the super tiny kind of red one, or they could be red or green. Just wildly inconsistent. I don't know if you guys have ever had like a serrano that, or any of the other smaller peppers that some of them are hot. Like, oh, this is pretty mild, and then you bite into one and it lights you up.
Yeah.
Bird's eye chilies do that on like a 100x scale. So kind of keeping that in mind. They are really, really cheap though. Again, like H Mart, go to H Mart. It's my favorite store on the planet. It's like $1.99 for a lifetime supply of like nobody needs 3 pounds of bird's eye chilies, but they always have them there. Just never dried chilies for this application.
Why?
They are more intense, and if you steep them in the vinegar, I think that the mouthfeel, it would be like eating a handful of like chili flakes like at a pizza restaurant, right? So they're not going to break down, and they're going to be super, super intense in heat. So it's just not going to be great.
Do you source your jalapenos? Because they're not typical retail stores. They're just not hot.
They are not hot anymore. I think that overall that is Serranos are like Serranos, and we don't, yeah. And I wanted to kind of gauge the heat scale. I didn't know how many people are going to show up, how, like, what the heat level was. I think cooking the last 6 years in this city, I've noticed that heat is the one thing that I think deters the most people out of anything else. I know that they're like, Khan is a great restaurant and is very famous, and they actually have a surprising amount of heat on that menu. But that was the one thing that I kind of had to get under wraps when I first came here, was to tone back heat. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't really use jalapenos that much in the restaurants. Fresnos, which are actually going out of season as of like a week ago, we got shorted on our first shipment. That is our preferred chili, or serranos. So we're just going to take these in half and then flatten the sides with the top 2 of our fingers and just expose these seeds, and they'll just lift right off. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I heard that jalapenos have been grown to be less with less heat.
Yeah. Are you guys familiar with habanadas?
No.
You say yeah? Habanadas are great. So those are actually going out of season right now too, but every year they were developed in California, and they're habaneros that have been genetically engineered to not have a ton of heat in them. We actually make like a hot sauce for a sweetbread dish, and they've still got that like great kind of balanced round flavor without a ton of like. I think habanada is kind of the breaking point pepper, where that if you're not really into heat, that's going to be maybe your threshold where that it's hot. So it kind of gives us that great flavor profile without having the mistake of maybe lighting somebody up a little bit too much. If if we have a rogue seed or two, they're welcome in this dish, so we don't have to get them all completely out. Most of them is what I'm aiming for. And then we're just going to do like a julienne on this, which is 2 inches by an 1/8 inch. And then we'll take these all down like the old, like classic French knife skill cuts. So julienne's 2 inches by an 1/8 inch. Brunoise is an 1/8 inch by an 1/8 inch by an 1/8 inch. So we're just going to get all of our 2-inch pieces kind of together, and then we'll just turn them sideways and finish our cut. I think this is too much pepper for the amount of beef that we have if they're not cut down smaller than that.
Chef, when you're using a knife, like how often do you sharpen it?
So I hone my knives with this honing rod here 3 or 4 times a day. When I actually take a whetstone out and sharpen them, it depends on what knives you're using, what applications, and like the kind of volume that you're doing in your kitchen. Like my fish fabrication knives, my slicers, I sharpen those much, much less. Your chef's knife here, like daily driver, what we call them. This is probably actually sat down and sharpened on a stone once a week, twice a week. I think if you hone them consistently, depending on the type of knife that you have too, if it's a carbon steel knife and they oxidize and you're cutting a ton of citrus and acidic things and you're not wiping them down and you're degrading that blade, then it's going to be even more than that. But I think that that is the most important thing, is to hone these as much as possible, and then to really learn how to sharpen them on a stone yourself. I mean, taking them to some of the shops around town that are great, just a lot of them have like 3 or 4 day turnarounds, and it's just not really conducive to what you want to accomplish. But I think once a week. What do you do yours every single day?
I like twice a week.
Twice a week, yeah. Once or twice a week is definitely.
And like flatted knives, taking in every like couple months.
Yeah.
Flattened.
And I think that that's a good point too. Like, it's definitely, even if you're a professional, you work in a professional kitchen, I think it serves you well to like just kind of get them touched up every once in a while. Like, I'll send my knives off before we close down for Christmas break, just to get a little bit of extra love on there. So we're just going to incorporate kind of everything and see that this beef has actually absorbed a good amount of the vinegar and citrus juice. So I'm going to add a little bit more just to make sure that it's submerged again. But I can start to see it cook and the texture change a little bit. And then, what was that? I will add salt at the end. Yeah, I'll add salt at the end. If you had soy sauce or shoyu sitting around, that's not super traditionalness. I always put it in there. I don't know if that's not super traditional, but in my family, it's traditional.
Is MSG traditional for?
Did you say MSG? I use MSG on everything. Thank you. What's your name? Gabriel? Abraham. MSG goes on everything. I love MSG. There's MSG in all of our kitchens. I don't know if anyone that had a really bad rap. Do you know why that had a bad rap? Does everyone?
Yeah, it was like kind of racist.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I don't know exactly if like a vast majority of it's traced back to like Chinese food specifically, right? It gives you headaches and all that. And it was really weird because growing up in my grandpa's kitchen, we just had these like containers full of MSG. I don't like 6-year-old version of me doesn't know what that is, and he put it in everything. That's why we call it make shit good. It makes everything a little bit better. And then all that stuff started coming around of like, I think like New York, it was coming out of initially, and then it kind of spread through the country. That it was giving you headaches, it was making you sick, and overuse of that. Like, salt is 100 times worse for you, like in large quantities, than MSG. Is like they've kind of backstepped on a lot of these studies that I guess the quote unquote that they were saying. There's no like scientific evidence that it's bad for you. We wouldn't put it in our food if it was. That's a great question, though. MSG should be in everyone's pantry. I love that. Just a little bit of fresh ginger, and I think I'll finish it with a little coconut milk. And like we said earlier, that's like kind of our fat layer to help ease the palate a little bit and make it read a little bit more balanced as this dish is going to get. And then we can serve some up for you guys.
So as we're wrapping up, any final general questions, topics?
You don't make that, right?
No.
Then we can let the sharpening expert answer that.
Oh yeah, I would.
Because you're talking about one of those rocker sharpeners? Terrible. So,
Okay, that's.
yeah, we do a lot of repairs off
Yeah.
those. You want to have control over angles. Angles fluid over time. You need to reduce that angle to get the same edge. So those are fixed angles. They're not necessarily the correct angle for it, and then they shear off steel lengthwise, which is not a good stable edge. And nothing can say. They're great for the people who make them themselves.
Yeah.
Coming back to the chef's point, emphasizing you get a lot of that question. We have a free lifetime sharpening, so we offer that as part of our knife. But we encourage people to hone it as much as possible. They can't like to say the biggest damage you can make to your knife, that we can make to your knife, is sharpening. As much as we try, sharpening always takes at least a millimeter or so off your knife. And if you're making an heirloom knife that we're hoping that you use for 20, 30, 40 years, if you start with a chef knife and you sharpen it every 3 months, every 4 months, you quickly end up, you start from a chef knife, and after maybe 20 years, you end up with a paring knife.
Yeah.
So much harder to pass on to the next generation. Most of the knives used in the kitchens, in the restaurants, are not meant to be passed on to the next generation. So one of the Chef Tin is one of the exceptions. A lot of our, they're pretty much in every great kitchens in Portland. But I find that a lot of chefs have our knives, but not in their restaurants.
Every day.
Peeling ginger, like spoon,
Spoon.
peeler.
A spoon, 100%. Great question. I was gonna peel it when everyone in front of everybody. Yes, do not peel it with anything other than a spoon. That's the life hack for sure. All right. I'm winging all this. I really hope it's good. I test like kind of ratio looking, and then like I'm gonna taste it before we kind of let it sit for its last 5 or 6 minutes or so, and then adjust the seasoning right before. So just straight cracked black pepper. Always prefer to grind, like we grind all of this in our house, and we just in-house. Sorry, we have all of our spices set up. Anything that you can grind to order, I'd suggest that you do that. It's just going to give you a better end result. And I don't think a lot of people realize that spices do like degrade over time. So we label our spices just like you would label anything, like all the green tape that you see on my mise en place. You really should do that, especially in a home kitchen. If you're not, cooking for 100 people a day, then you're going to go through your pantry much slower than we do in our kitchens. And those spices will start to lose power. And then if you're trying to write down a recipe, record it, pass it on to friends, your children, whatever it is, they might be off. And you have to start using more. If you ever like actually write down a recipe that you like and then try to replicate it sometime later and it's off, that could be one of the issues. Yeah, yes. I think 7.5 to 8 inches, like kind of my preferred length for my chef's knife or my daily driver for sure. Longer for your slicers. Paring knife always around. Like I can get through most of my day-to-day prep, like not knowing what I'm walking into. Like if I like when we go to the restaurants right after this, I was there this morning, so I know what's going on in the prep list. But I think with an 8-inch chef's knife and a paring knife, I can do 90% of the tasks that are usually on the menus.
Do you have a favorite dish on the menu right now?
Favorite dish on the menu right now. I really, really am in love with our 4th course in La Pigeon right now. It's a seared Maine scallop. We make Parisian gnocchi, which is potato-less, right? It's like a closer to like a pâte à choux. So you make your liquid that consists of matsutake shoyu, a little bit of butter, a little bit of dashi, and then you like fold in flour. And then once it starts to set and make this dough and kind of sheen, we actually have chopped unagi, so like freshwater eel that's in there, which sounds really odd, but is so delicious. And then you put it in a stand mixer, work it while it's cooling down until the steam stops, and then we'll like kind of hand fold in 6 egg yolks, and it'll set into a dough. And then we poach that in dashi. So it's seared scallop that's covered with a little pickled ginger and some finger limes, which I brought some with me because they're awesome and they taste really good. And a little lemongrass nage, which is like a fortified uh, fish fume, essentially. And it's just like, it's hard. I love cooking in autumn, especially like later autumn. And it's such an autumn dish that doesn't feel heavy. I think it's hard to be like sharp and light and also feel like fall. So that's my absolute favorite, I think, right now. I use matsutake everywhere. So I have like 4 separate foragers that all like try to outbid each other by 30 cents a week and like show up. I have a spoon bread, which is similar to like a cornbread souffle. So that's our vegetarian supplement right now. We have like the whole thing is matsutakes and pine cone. So pine cone syrup, roasted pine nuts with MSG and a little citric acid, and then fresh shaved matsutakes, and then a wild like mushroom matsutake cream. So just celebration of matsu, I think is, especially if you're from out of town, I think that's, yeah, I think that's what you want to see if you're visiting from anywhere else in the country, pretty much. Like, and you love food, you want to come into that restaurant and see matsutakes on the menu, and they're just so versatile. And unfortunately, they won't be around for super long. They just started a couple weeks ago for us, but I feel like every time we get really excited about it, then they just kind of disappear. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. We'll start making some plates and.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
People watching online too. So before Canard opened, it was impossible to get a job at Pigeon. You guys had that like 6-month staging program. Everybody was waiting in line.
Yeah.
Now that you guys are open, sounds like maybe Canard's almost, I don't want to use like not like the farm team, but that's where you kind of like start people out.
That is the best. Yeah. So just opened our 3rd location for Canard. That is where we can assess talent and move people through into La Pigeon. So that is the best way if you're looking to get into the Pigeon Kitchen. There's 6 positions there. 2 of my sous chefs are included in that. So going in through Canard, working through there, working with Gabriel and myself, and getting like that's the best way to get exposure and time, face time with both of us, and for us to kind of see the important things, right? Like I think the biggest thing is if you knew everything, you wouldn't need the job, right? So we want you to come in not knowing things and having the ability to teach you. I think the biggest part is showing up on time, ready to work, and just having a great love and passion for food. But definitely Canard is the only way to get into Le Pigeon at this time.
Right, and known and giving a chance for chef to plate, get a chance to enjoy all the stuff. What a treat! That's going from nice to I personally really really enjoyed all the details about making the food and recipes and knife skills, but having that additional background of why and hows and some of the history and cultural aspects is just really fascinating. So I recommend, if you haven't had a chance to go to Canard, any of the three ones. I personally haven't tried the Beaverton one yet, but it has been such a great response over there. But just quite a treat. So getting a little bit of a taste of from chef, and I just got a text from Gabriel Rucker saying, "Go, man!" so he's excited watching on YouTube or somewhere hearing stuff. So I just want to, while we're plating, just a reminder, if you get a chance to do a quick review. I have one here and one Emma back there. Feel free to review, and then let Emma know that you have done it. Emma is in the back with one of these things stuck on, so feel free to resend. Let her know so we can. We're going to do drying in about 5 minutes or so right after the plating. So pass that on in case anybody wants the areas. So again, any questions? Specifically, we have really focused around use of the knife, use of the tools. My business partner, Eitan, and our bladesmith is here. So if there's any need for any questions on the tools, how to use a honing rod, and feel free to ask and sit up there. And Nate, our from our productions back there as well. Sharpening. If you brought your STEELPORT sharpener, it's a great time to let it. We get it back to you in 5 minutes. So again, feel free to relax, move around, and check out the places you have any questions, and or step forward and ask any questions while the chef is doing the final secret addition of coconut oil. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. This is my salt. I left MSG out of this one. I kept thinking about bringing it over here. I wanted to keep this like as traditional as possible, just to I haven't cooked this dish in a while, so this is like it's a fun thing for me right now. No. I would use it in addition. I think that you need salt to finish for sure, and MSG is going to just give us that like kind of roundness in the middle. Yeah, absolutely. And like honestly, it should have like a good amount of flake salt to like actually finishing salt, because